Well, as we think about these Christians in the book of Acts and the ways that they brought somebody along in mission, that they mentored them, that they lived life together, that they prayed together, that they did all the things together, it might be a little bit intimidating. Like, I think it's a little intimidating to think about what these super Christians are like. And the question is always, but I'm not like that. I'm not a super Christian. I'm just an ordinary person. Maybe I'm a retiree, or I have kids in work, or whatever it might be. So the first question that I want to pose us is, discipleship and mentoring and investing in somebody, is that just for super Christians? Because I don't really feel like I can relate to people like Paul and Barnabas. And I think the answer is yes and no, that clearly Paul and Barnabas played a really special role in history, right? They were building the church in really exciting big ways. But the other part of that is you don't have to be a super Christian, that we see throughout the New Testament that the invitation is for all people to invest in other people. That throughout the many books, that is one of the things that is commended over and over again, is that we are called, no matter what station we are in life, to invest in other people and encourage them in their relationship with the Lord. Well, I want to dive a little bit today on the term disciple, because what does that really mean? It's a word that we throw around a lot. Well, simply said, a disciple is a learner, okay? A disciple is someone who is learning how to follow Jesus. And we see that in the original language of the scriptures, but also in Latin. So a disciple is somebody who is trusting Jesus and governing their life. A disciple is somebody who makes mistakes, but then the grace of God helps them to move forward. God chooses us to be learners in His kingdom and to partner with the Holy Spirit to invest in other people in the process. So a few days ago, I came across this quote that was on my Instagram feed, and a little bit of a backstory for it. This is somebody that I actually knew. This is a woman who I went to a class with a lot of years ago, and she's just an incredible person of faith. And I actually got to know her daughter a little bit, and her daughter is a pastor and a writer. And she had received this quote from her mom just shortly before she passed away, fairly recently. And as I read through this quote, I thought, yes, this is one of the things that I want the congregation to just think about, because it really resonated with me. So it's specifically about the context of discipling our kids. But I think as I read it, you'll see that it's a much broader application. And so the woman's name is Hallie Cowan. So here we go. Hallie says, I would say to parents who want to see their kids discipled that we are tempted to be a priest for our kids, telling God what the kid meant and the kid what God meant. No, we should turn our kids over to God as soon as possible. Get out of the way. That way, when a kid, as a natural part of growing up, rejects their parents' values, that they won't reject God because God is theirs. And what I loved about this quote is that this is really the work of investing and discipling, that we aren't meant to carry a heavy burden of being a priest, of being a know-it-all, of having all the answers, of being that in-between, that we are meant to be just a person that points people to Jesus and helps them to cultivate that relationship with God. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the ways that we can do that. So years ago, I had a friend who really wanted an older woman to pour into her, disciple her, mentor her. And so she asked around, and she asked several different women, and over again, all of the women said to her, I can't do that. Like, I don't have it all together. I don't know how to answer your questions. And she left discouraged and disappointed. And what she said to me was, Angela, I was just looking for a friend. I was just looking for somebody who had more life experience and would pray with me and would go to coffee with me and just kind of help me to see the bigger picture of what God might be doing in my life. And so that leads us to these questions of, well, what does it mean for us to invest in somebody, or how do we do that? And I think over and over again, we see that the answer is not so much about the method, but it's about the mission, all right? That as Jesus poured into his disciples, that he lived life with them. So I love this quote by Robert Coleman. He is no longer alive, but he's a classic when it comes to discipleship. So this is what he has to say in his classic book, Master Plan of Evangelism. He says, this is about Jesus. Having called his men, Jesus made it a practice to be with them. This was the essence of his training program, just letting his disciples follow him. Amazing as it may seem, all Jesus did to teach these men his way and to draw them close to himself. He was his own school and curriculum. All right, so I love this because I think this is what it means to invest in somebody. It means to be with them. It means to point them to Jesus. And as Jesus was inviting people to come to him and to learn from him, he drew from daily examples, and that's something that we can learn from as well. He ate with people. They traveled together. They engaged in mission together. They just lived daily life today. And so that leads me to my third question, which is, well, what kind of person do I need to be if I want to mentor somebody? How should I go about this? And I want to just briefly lay out just 3 characteristics that I think of that are really important if you want to invest in somebody else. So the first one is faithful, okay? Faithful. And faithful is just simply put 2 things. One, it's somebody who puts their trust in the resurrected Jesus, okay? Number 1, faithful, being filled with faith in the resurrected Jesus. Number 2, it's somebody that can be relied on. It's somebody that's dependable. And the second thing that came to my mind was the word available. Okay, so number 1 was faithful, number 2 is available. And I think it's important that we realize that this sort of means 2 things, that if we're looking to pour into somebody, to invest our life, that we need to be available in 2 ways. First of all, we need to be just available with our time, which seems obvious, right? Like we have to be able to actually hang out with them and spend time with them. But I think the other way that we need to be available is we need to be open to vulnerability, that they are going to ask us hard questions, that we need to be willing to share struggles in our own life, that we need to be sharing how God is working on our own heart and modeling humility. And lastly, the last thing is teachability, that as we consider what it means to be a good mentor, to invest in people, that we ourselves need to be teachable, and we're also looking for other people that are teachable, that are open to Jesus and are willing to change. Well, I want to close today by just encouraging you with a story of a friend of mine. So several years ago when I was living in Seattle, I lived in this little apartment in the U District with my family, and my daughter was just little at the time. And I went to a park one day and I met this amazing woman named Priska, and she lived in an apartment down the way, and she had a little son. And Priska was from Uganda. Her husband was a graduate student at the U, and she did not know hardly anybody. She was really far away from home, and she was really socially isolated because she had a young child. And over time, we cultivated a relationship, and she ended up moving into my apartment complex. And most of the time that I spent with her was just living life together. We would honestly spend most of our time just sitting at the little playground in our neighborhood and just watching our kids play and visiting. And in those moments, I was able to support her and encourage her. I was able to answer some of her questions about faith. And when she went through a really hard situation with her family, I was able to support her and pray for her and be there for her. And I love to think that I mentored her, but even in addition to that, she mentored me, because she modeled for me what it was like to be brave and courageous, to be a person from a different culture and a new country, where there were so many things that she didn't understand, but she was so brave and she was so courageous. So even in mentoring relationships, we always have things to learn. I'd like to leave you today with 3 questions. So the first question is, what part of making disciples do you find intimidating? Number 2, where do you see God at work in someone younger than you in life experience or in faith? And number 3, what step can you take this week to encourage or come alongside someone else?
Hi, thanks for watching. The people of Harbor Covenant Church really want you to know the love that God has for you, want to grow with you in faith, and want to serve alongside you, not only to help others do the same, but also to make our families and our communities better. If that sounds like something that you can get on board with, then like, follow, and drop us a comment in the video. Watch some more videos on our channel or come visit us on Sunday. You can find out more about Harbor Covenant Church at harborcov.church.